Welcome, 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 everybody. I am back with another What's Your Story? And today I am with a fellow cohort, former Nordstrom leader, David Brooke, but that is not why I am interviewing him, although I do have an affinity for my time there. David Brooke is the author of The Gratitude Guy, I believe. It's a journal, a 365-page journal where you work towards cultivating gratitude, which for anybody who watches this show knows changes your brain. He is also a motivational speaker. He speaks at different venues, really impressing upon the power of positive thinking and the importance of gratitude. And he stamped on my heart because I love anybody who shows up in kindness and empowered in this world. So, David, thank you for coming on to my show. I was going to say having me.
Carrie Lewis, thank you so much. It's great to be here. And can you give anybody a bigger compliment than saying, it's my new best friend?
I know,
But
right?
we were just talking about that when you were saying about we should record, because sometimes we get off and they think, oh, that'd be something good to be on the recording. But it's just like the whole Zoom thing, where this has only been really in the last 2 or 3 years, sort of prior to the pandemic getting started, where it really came into its own was during the pandemic and continues to now with everybody in the hybrid workplaces. But I remember when I first clicked on the camera for you, and I just felt this incredible connection. And it's the energy you were talking, which is what we were just talking about. It's the energy, and it's palpable. I mean, it's hard to explain it to somebody who doesn't have energy or doesn't get that feeling, where you can just tell in 20, 30, 40 seconds the connection you have.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody can pick up on the energy. It's just you and I are tapped into ourselves enough to be able to really speak that language around other people. Whereas a lot of people, i.e., our former employees and such, they gravitated toward our messaging and stuff, thinking it was because of what we were saying and teaching, but really the buy-in was because we came from this empowered energy where, it like people want to follow that,
Yeah, you're right. And you mentioned very, very briefly about the fact we have this shared experience of Nordstrom. And I'm thinking back, for me, it's 25 years ago. It doesn't seem that long ago. But even for me, and I think you said the same experience, there's just certain people that it's like, things rising to the cream, rising to the top of the milk or something like that. It just, you notice certain people. And I remember that just everybody at Nordstrom started, as using them as an example, everybody started at the bottom, which I
Yeah.
love. I started selling suits. I was just a salesperson, nothing fancy. And even though I had some other experience, but then you start getting promoted. The more you sell, the more you give good customer service, the more you do more teamwork and that kind of thing. But there were just certain people, back to your point about energy, and I'm sure you remembered it as well, to use that as an example, that you could just identify. That's a person that's going places. You could just tell. And they were positive and outgoing, and they put their money where their mouth is, and they treated people with respect and all those characteristics that you like. And that's what happened to me. I remember getting my shoe shined one day, and I was just, again, a salesman, and the shoe shine guy had been there many years, and I was just happy to have a job the way my life had worked out. And he says, I just want to tell you something. You're going to go places at Nordstrom. I said, well, his name was Morgan. I said, Morgan, I just want to sell suits. And he goes, I know what they do here. You're going to be going places. And he was right. He
Yeah.
was right. I mean, it was really a cool thing.
Yeah, I love that. So, of course, this is What's Your Story? And, we've talked about this offline, but I want you to share with the audience. I think the difference between you and I is you've kind of always had an attitude of gratitude. Like you were either born or cultivated this really just optimistic, joyful energy from a really young age, where for me, it took me years and extensive work to be able to cultivate the brain that I have now. Talk to me about your formative years and just any experiences that you want to share with the audience on, you know, gratitude, just really being an optimist, and how that's kind of played out in your life to get you to where you are today.
Yeah, thank you. And it's interesting, they are formative experiences. And so much of our growing up starts, not totally, but a big chunk of it is our mom and our dad. And I had a mother who was very outgoing, very positive, very upbeat and everything, but also manic depressive. So she'd go
Mhm.
through these depressive modes or these bipolar type things. And it's like, oh my goodness. And I'm going to kill myself and all this sort of terrible stuff. And then she'd be higher in the kite and so forth. So, but she had so many ways to teach me the glass is always half full. My father, the glass was always half empty. And he was an attorney, very successful one, and a decent father. We were fed and clothed and never abused in any way. And they got divorced when I was about 16. But he ultimately committed suicide,
Yeah.
and he wasn't a happy person. And so I remember something that I think about the formative things happens when I was about in my early 20s, and it just had one of those introspective moments where, you go to grade school, you go to junior high school, you go to high school, I go to college, I married my high school sweetheart. We didn't have kids, but we were married. And I thought, so I don't get what the point, what do you do now? So do you just like work for a company for like 50 years and you get a gold watch and then you go to the nursing home? And I thought there's got to be something more about this. And so I remember it was actually a little before that when I was 19, I was a freshman at the University of Washington. And a teacher from the previous high school I went to asked me to come and speak to his group of students about what it's going to take to be successful. So I went and I talked to the group, and I was kind of nervous, drinking water. My mouth was kind of dry, but I told them what I thought it took to be successful. And I was a freshman, as I mentioned, at the University of Washington. I go back and I sit in my car. This is in like August of 1969. And I thought, that's what I want to be someday, as a motivational speaker. I just, that's what I want to do, because I watched all those people paying attention to me, talking about having that energy carry to be in front of a group, as you and I have talked about. And so, but it took me 45 years to get the guts to do it and to step away from life. Life, what is life? It happens when you're expecting other things or some statement like that. And so it wasn't until about 10 years ago when I finally realized my dream to become a speaker. And I'd gone on from Nordstrom to be managing stores for Lowe's and stopped. And it just was interesting because I remember thinking, you've heard of the 5 regrets of the dying, and I won't go through all 5, but one of them is one of my favorites of the 5 is I wish I'd taken more chances. And
Yeah.
people say, oh, Carrie Lewis, I always wanted to be this. I always wanted to be a ballet dancer. I wanted to be a mechanic. I always wanted to do this. I wanted to be a pilot. But not a lot of people do it. It seems like a small percentage. So I was 63 at the time. And I remember thinking, well, you better live up to what you talked about. So I quit Lowe's and became a speaker. And then along the way, the gratitude thing has always been a piece of my existence. But it was kind of, this is so old and so trite, but I just have never come up with a better thing. This whole concept of the glass half full, half empty, I just haven't come up with a better one because I've always seen it as half full. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a choice. If you go to that gratitude guide, it's right on here, thatgratitudeguide.com. The first line at the very top says, you and only you choose your attitude. Carrie
Yeah.
chooses hers every day, so does David. And then it says you can choose an attitude of gratitude. You will be happier, healthier, and lighter. But it's a choice. And you talk about, you and I have coached people. Well, Carrie, you don't understand. David, you don't. No, 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 no. Don't give me the you don't understand. You have a choice, and you can get out of the left side of the bed or the right side of the bed. And so it's been something, and it's just has carried me. And I just am so glad. Sounds a little self-serving, but I finally had the guts to do it, because there's many days I kind of thought, wow, you walked away from a lot of money, a lot of benefits, a lot of other things. But I've been living that dream of being that speaker ever since. It's made such a huge difference.
Well, think about this. One, you're not taking your money with you to the grave. That's one thing.
True.
And two, that I find really interesting is you kind of had that revelation when you're coming out of college, you're just married and you're like, so this is it, right?
Right.
And that's where I struggle, because I think that's a narrative that we have to break away from. We should not be conditioned to believe that we go to X amount of years of school and then we get a job for X amount of years. We buy a house, have 2.5 kids, a dog, a car, and then you die. And sadly, there is still that narrative a lot amongst high school. I'm a mother of 2 children in high school. Instead of saying, why don't you take a year off from high school to go to college and explore and figure out what you want to do? And you were like, is this really all there is? But I imagine back then, right, that's however many years, let's see, 63 is when you jumped in. So 40 something years, there wasn't as much opportunity to explore, right? We didn't have the advent of the internet. So talk to me about how you kept that glass full attitude throughout those years, having still had this dream in the back of your head, but maybe not really striving to achieve it just yet?
Well, one of the things, good question. One of the things is along the way, as you say, way before the internet and social media and cell phones, even cell phones or anything, I just got into this habit. And again, you and I just briefly talked about this offline. I'm always at the front of the class. I'm always, when we race speedboats, when we race go-karts, I've learned how to fly, I was always the pilot, the driver, the one at the front of the class or whatever. And so along the way, I always managed people. And so way back when at the university bookstore, I was working there. I went to the University of Washington. So I became the manager, managed that. Then I managed a fancy boutique. And then I went and managed a couple other different stores. And then eventually went back and started at Nordstrom in my mid-30s and was there for 15 years. And so it was something about managing all those people that made me realize that was a strong point of mine. Number one, to know how to manage them. And I've said many, many times that number one rule for managing people is the golden rule. People talk about it all the time, but they don't practice it. And I treat Carrie Lewis in which department she works in, and I don't think I'm any better than you because I'm the store manager and you're the manager of hosiery or whatever it might be, and treat people with respect. But watching the reaction to people when you manage them and you treated them right, and you could see you had an impact in their life. So I think that's where I thought at some point I want to reach more and more people. And this is
Yeah.
even before I knew about the gratitude guide, but I got where the point where I'd have people, I would transfer stores. I managed 3 different stores. People would transfer stores to come and work the store that I was managing, which was just the ultimate compliment. And now coming kind of full circle, but that's kind of where it started, is this idea that every week, and I'm always kind of humbled is the best word by this comment. Every single week, 2 or 3 people tell me I changed their life.
Yeah.
And I've got over 2,000 videos on YouTube. I have my website, I have TikTok, I have all these different things. And there's notes and cards and emails and comments and things like this. And it humbles me because I think I had the guts to walk away from the corporate America, and you were there right there with me. So you know what it's like with all those bennies. But I have this stronger calling to help people. And so managing those, to your question, managing those people early on and seeing the way that, I mean, they say that 70 to 80% of the people hate their jobs, and then half the 2/3 of those people or whatever hate their boss. Most bosses aren't very good. And so when you get to do something that you really like and you're good at it, and then you get the response, it just reinforces it that much more that I've got to keep reaching out to people. And now the bigger and bigger groups I get to, I've spoken to 10,000 soldiers at Joint Base Lewis McChord, a number of conventions and conferences where it's 1,000 people. And it's thrilling to me because you
Yeah.
look out in this audience, you see this. You see this all across the thing, people
Yeah.
nodding their heads and smiling and things. So impacting those lives is, I think, the biggest thing that drove me to keep doing it. And then gratitude just seemed like a piece, because gratitude, I always say the term gratitude turns what you have into enough. And it's all about, again, seeing that glass half full and not always worrying about it. In fact, I'll give you a very current, literally in the last week or 10 days update. I live in a nice condo and I have a beautiful view of Lake Washington here in Seattle. And I may have mentioned to you this on a previous call, it was about a month ago, but my condo got flooded because of a freeze. And so I thought it wasn't as bad as I thought. Well, it's a lot worse than I thought. And so my entire kitchen, dining room, living room, hardwood floors is all ripped up. Half the walls missing below. So all I have is my little office right here. And I have a hallway with the bathroom to my bedroom. The kitchen's suspect. So I really live in 2 rooms right now, my bedroom and my office. I have no other place. I watch TV now on my laptop. But you know what? I don't care. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. And so this office, I've got files like we all do and so forth. And so once again, gratitude at work. Could have been a lot worse. So I'm grateful it wasn't.
Yeah, there's a couple things that I want to touch upon. One that you said, so you were talking about how you and I both have experience walking away from corporate and having walked away from those bennies and stuff. But would you not say it's far more rewarding to get those notes in the mail saying you changed my life? Because I, like you, get a lot of feedback that way. And I'm like, you know what? I'm good. If it means that somebody else's heart has been touched, I'm good with not having those benefits anymore.
Totally, you couldn't have said it any better, because it just to me, and the word that I always think about that, there's several words, but one of the big words that comes to me is what's your legacy? You
Yeah.
want to be going over. I remember I met Carrie Lewis once. I knew David Brooke. I just, it's something like that. That's just, it's, as I say, I keep coming back to the word humbling because it's so nice to put yourself in a position where you can help other people. And one of the things that I notice, and I always hesitate to say this, but that's why I think you and I are very blessed to not only have been do what we do, but also to lead other people and get those comments. A lot of people, in my experience, for all, managing, I don't know, 10 or 15,000, a lot of people over the years,
Yeah.
they're not married, not many that are motivated. There's some,
You
not a lot.
actually, so here's the thing, you actually kind of touched upon my next question or comment, which is, I found I was a terrible leader for 10 years, right? Because I was steeped in addiction and I needed to survive and stuff. But much like you, I've always had this internal drive to take care of people. So I worked incredibly hard, studied leadership books and communication skills. So eventually I got to a level where I was an exceptional leader. I can say that hands down. I was a tough leader because I held people accountable for executing on their responsibilities. I had the ability to have tough conversations, but I was also compassionate. And so much like you, I would have people follow me to different stores. And I think the misconception is a really good leader is this really nice, soft, fluffy person. And I disagree. I think a really good leader is going to create and set clear expectations, be fear straight down the line, be fair, hold everybody equally accountable to achieving the same results from top to bottom, and then being able to teach. And to your point, capitalizing on a person's strengths instead of identifying all of their weaknesses, that's what gets them motivated. Because if they don't believe in themselves, but your manager's like, listen, I see you doing a great job connecting with the customers. You really want to just focus on that. That's a skill set. To me, that makes a really good leader. Would you not agree?
Oh, I would definitely agree. And I think that, again, it's kind of one of those things sometimes, is it nature versus nurture? When Morgan Perkins was his name says, you're the kind of guy that's going to go places. It comes back to what you and I said about when the Zoom first comes on and in the first 30, oh, I love this Carrie Lewis. I mean, it's just 30 to 45 seconds. Why is that? Well, it's kind of using our example of Nordstrom. It's kind of the same thing. You could identify people that wanted to work hard, wanted to be held accountable, wanted to make the strides. And, they would say there's a 3 parts to the triangle: customer service, teamwork, and productivity. You have to have all 3. Yeah, well, there's one thing is customer service and teamwork are about 5% each. Productivity was about 90%. And if you sold more, you were going to the top. But I think in managing people and why people followed you, they followed me. I've been maintaining this for quite a while. You and I are both parents. I think to be a parent, to be a good parent, and to be a good leader, both of those require the same number one skill, and that is you better set a doggone good example. And you can't go, you better not smoke, but excuse me, can I get another pack of Luckies? Yeah, I'm puffing away. It just doesn't work that way. So I would come in early and expect the people to come in early, and they were following Carrie Lewis and the same thing. But I had managers, I'd have employees, managers have to call up to my office and, what are you doing? I said, everybody's doing the freight and you're over at the coffee shop. And they go, well, I'm the manager. I go, you don't
Yep.
get it. You just don't get it. I said, you
Yep.
got to set an example. You got to be right in the trenches and you'll go far. But I should be able to do whatever I want. Well, I said, you're never going to get very far. And that's why it just seemed to me a lot of people didn't get it. And when you got those ones that you knew were the stellar ones that you could hold accountable and they're going to be just like you, I wanted to take them to the copier machine and put them in and hit 10.
Me
I
too.
needed
It's
10 of
so
them.
true. And it is something that you keep highlighting that I love. And I just shared this with my friend Yanko before we jumped on this call. On my vision board, and one of the biggest words on my vision board is humble. And that was something I learned a long time ago is never get too big for your britches because you have no idea when you're going to get knocked back down to your knees, because even though you've had this exceptional life, you've learned how to fly, you've been a leader for, Nordstrom and Lowe's, and you've had all these opportunities. I imagine that you faced some struggle too, right?
Oh, absolutely. And it's actually, it's the humbling thing that is the most rewarding. It really is. And it humbles you. It makes you think. And it's kind of like the whole thing about nobody wants to be, if you're really good at something, the good person always goes, yes, thank you, thank you, thank you. But what could I get better at? And for some reason, it reminds me of, and it's not quite R-rated, but it just reminds me of this dating experience I had once, because it's just funny to me when you think, tell me about all your conquests. Tell me about what you did or whatever it was. And I said, no, 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 no. I said, I'd rather tell you about a time that I took a gal out and we went and we had drinks for an hour and a half, and you talk about humbling, and it's great conversation. Her brother was schizophrenic. I have a schizophrenic brother. I thought we had a great conversation. Walk her to the car. I said, well, I think this was great. I was thinking maybe about dinner next week. She goes, I don't think so. And I went, oh
Oh.
my, my. I'm, I don't want to sound something, but I'm not used to that. But anyway, but I said, okay. I said, do you mind if I ask why? She points back to the restaurant. She goes, I don't know if that was more of a date or more of an interrogation. And clearly I asked too many questions. But my point being is, I think that's funny. I would rather talk about getting knocked down a peg
Yeah.
than thinking I'm all that in a bag of chips, And so, because you learn from it's the tripping and falling where you learn when you're
Yeah.
out front and everything. And another thing, you just said something, Carrie, that made me think of it. It's such a sad example, but all that in a bag of chips. I think one of the saddest examples in the last 20 or 30 years or whatever, when you watch TV, are all these TV stars that are stars when they're young, and then they're dead or on drugs by the time they're in their 20s and 30s because they never had a normal childhood. So
Yeah.
you have to trip and fall, you have to be rejected, you have to do all that kind of stuff. How do you appreciate up if you don't see down? So I
Yeah.
just think it's important to have the other side of the coin.
Well, I also think, to your point, and I think what makes a good leader, and which is why you're exceptional at motivational speaking and coaching, because I know you coach as well. I was talking to somebody you happen to coach when I was on your what is it, bi-monthly, monthly
Oh yeah,
gratitude thing.
monthly gratitude infusion mastermind.
Yeah. So but the reality is resiliency, right? When you're an effective leader, you're going to push people past their perceived limits, right? But a good leader is also going to continue to encourage, motivate, and say, yeah, it's hard. Yep, it stinks. This month was horrible. You really you kicked it, but you
Mhm.
can't quit, because if you quit, and I think that's really where we are facing a crisis now with mental health and people both in corporate America and or our children, is that there's not a lot of resiliency, man. There's
Right.
just not. We've had it so easy for so long that people, moms came in and fixed the sadness for their kids and all this, fathers too. And as a result, you have people who face that their first hardship, and they turn to water, they're puddles, because they've never had to overcome adversity.
You're right. And there's something else that just came out. I saw this a couple of days ago. It really shocked me, considering I'm 74, and I think about people, and if you do the decade 70 to 79 or whatever, a lot of people are sick. They don't take care of themselves. They've got all sorts of illnesses. People are dying, and there's things that have happened. And so they said, which decade of age right now, 19 to 29, 20, 30 to 39, all the way up to 70 to 79, is there the most depression, anxiety, and suicide? And you know what it is? 19 to 29.
Yep.
And it's so sad to me. And I know social media gets picked on for a lot of things, and it has done some good things. But gosh, resiliency, you're exactly right. Where's the resilience? Where's the
Yeah.
people that say, I got back up and I dust myself off and get back on the race again? Where'd that go?
Yeah. Well, and I mean, think about this. You or I, we would never have had the the guts, to your point, like the courage to leave a perceived, because and I know, after, especially after COVID, but because of your age and what I've been through, there really isn't any security, but this perceived security to go into business for ourselves, um because of the amount of things that we had faced in our lifetime and gone through and overcame and built resiliency. So we built this self-trust, this intrinsic um reliance on ourselves, that no matter how hard it got, we knew that we could persevere and push through. And if people aren't facing hard things, then they don't learn themselves and they don't learn the full capacity of what they are able to actually accomplish in this life. And that to me is a sad thing, because to your point, there are a lot of people going to their grave having never ever learned just how amazing they are.
It's so true. And I think just in its basic form, you're absolutely correct, which is a very sad thing, especially going to their graves, having that, never realized that. And that's why this whole idea of the 5 regrets of the dying, I wish I'd taken more chances. It is not, but I will say this, Carrie, to be a little bit fair to you and me, it is not for the faint of heart. Even now, 10 years into this, I probably said this to you before. I have a bathroom. I walk right through past this mirror with a sink into the bathroom to go to the bathroom. And sometimes as I'm working on stuff in the computer and I walk back to go to the bathroom, I look in the mirror and go, do you have any idea of what you're doing? Do you have any clue? It's like, I mean, there's nobody to talk to. I got, hey, what do you think I should I go left or right? Should I buy that software? Oh, it's just me, and it's like, you just hope you make the right decision. So it's not for the faint of heart. You have to, but the problem is not the problem. The solution is the payoff is so good when
Yeah.
we get people again telling you change their life, you change their trajectory. It's just amazing.
Yeah. And for me, it was people showing up for me that helped change my life that did it. And so I, even more than looking in the mirror and saying, what in God's name am I doing? And all that, it's somebody showed up and did that for me, and I'm sure that they didn't know what they were doing. In fact, I know now because I know where they're at in their life. They didn't. So it's an obligation for me. I feel like it's my responsibility to pay it forward and show up in service to people. But with that, so let's talk about, so you at 63, you're like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna jump in. Did you just know you were gonna uplift people and inspire them, or did you kind of have an idea that you were gonna be guided to the gratitude focus of how you showed up for people?
Yeah, it's another good question because some of it is kind of organic. Things just happen. And when you look back and you see the trail that like Steve Jobs says, you can connect the dots backwards, but not forwards. I can look back and see, well, I took a left that day, talked to this person, talked to Carrie Lewis, then I talked to Yanko, I talked, whatever it might be. You can connect them, but you can't always forward. You just have to trust they'll connect forward. But I think for me, it was just a series of things where I decided finally to become a speaker. I knew that I didn't know what my topic was going to be, but I knew that I needed some help to how to manage my stress and manage my sadness or manage the disappointment or whatever you want to call it. And so this buddy of mine, he always says to me, I tell him I had a keynote speech yesterday. Did you mention my name? I go, I do sometimes. I don't all the time. He also wants me to say his name and the thing. But he said to me, you know what you should get. And I'm not a fan of you should, you need to, you have to, you got to. I don't like
I
those 4
agree.
starters. You should do this. But he said you should get a gratitude journal. So I got one. And typical David Brooks, something I've always been proud of, is I usually just dive into something. So I started writing it and I noticed a big difference. And it was actually The Secret gratitude journal from the movie and the book, The Secret.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah. And so I started writing it and I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And it really made a difference. And so then I developed my own. The first one was the Brooker, is my nickname I use. And now it's that Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. But that's what it, so I thought, well, that's going to be my topic. So I'm going to talk about gratitude. And so then I developed a talk, I developed modules, I developed exercises, activities, things like this. But maybe the biggest thing of all is the stories. I have a list that has about 500 stories on it that are my stories. With each one, here's the story of the lawnmower, which is the message is persistence, Connor in baseball, staying hanging in there, whatever it might be. And so it just continued to grow. And I think I would advise anybody that was wondering or thinking about doing the same thing is there's sort of this, I don't want to say again, you have to, I just finished saying, I don't like to say that, but it helps if you have this belief that your vision will come true if you just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I always think of those things in the movies when they're doing the previews and it shows the person walking on the stairway and they step out into the space before the next stairway appears and then it
Yep.
appears. It's
The
kind of like
Matrix.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like that. And so you just have to believe the next stair is going to be there and just sort of follow dreams. I think it's really important. Sometimes I tell people that I coach people that are getting ready to retire or about to retire or have retired about what did you want to be when you grew up? What would you do if you got paid no money? What would you want to have happen to you if every day you woke up and you couldn't wait to get to work or you were just so excited to help people? What would that be? And sometimes people find long lost dreams. So mine was from 19. And again, even though it was 45 years later, I'm so glad I did it. And then back to this feedback that we said that we get from people with the work that you and I do, it just validates it every day.
Yeah. Yeah, it absolutely does. And I love that. And you're spot on, right? So when I jumped into coaching, I literally just morally knew I could not work in the industry I was working at anymore for no other reason than I just saw the propensity to overconsume substances that could be harmful and keep people stuck in mental health issues. And so I kind of pivoted and I kind of transmorphed until I finally realized, oh my God, why not coach the very thing that you healed yourself? Like, and think
Right.
about it, you are teaching and speaking on the methodology that really essentially got you through all of these things in your life, from, learning how to fly a plane to moving up the corporate ladder, which you and I both did. So that's not easy. There's a lot of pitfalls
Yeah.
and struggles and stuff. And so you're right, you're not going to know, but you do have to take the leap of faith. And it is truly with that gratitude practice, right? With that taking moments to sit and just, even if it's you're thankful for this glass of water, if that's all you can
Exactly.
cultivate in this moment during the hard moments of building a business, choosing to choose gratitude is really important. And the other thing I love is that you have a book, which you should show to the audience if you
Yeah,
have it.
I was just going to pull up, and I've actually done several books, but this is actually the journal. This is by far my top seller, that
Yep.
Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. And it's a nice segue into this because I wanted to make sure and say this. There was something about when I first got that first gratitude journal before I did mine, is that it's got a template so you can kind of follow through on it. But it's very important. There's a little saying in the front of it that says, if you think about it, it's like a dream. If you talk about it, it inspires you. But if you write about it, it empowers you. So
Mhm.
one of the things on the template, here's the way it's broken down into little things. You kind of fill out each little thing and so forth. But one of the things is the highlight of your day. So I always write first thing in the morning, and like here's today's entry already filled out and so forth. But the highlight of my day tomorrow, maybe there's one or two things. One of them, if not the only thing, will be my conversation with one Carrie Lewis, making the highlight of my day in my gratitude journal.
Woo, woo. But
And
no, so
so,
let me I really want the audience to hear this because this is super important. So any of you guys who are struggling with mental health issues, i.e. depression, anxiety, and or steeped in addiction, the reason I love the gratitude journal, right, is it's visceral. So it's physical and it's visual, meaning you see it. And so often, David, when we're stuck in this like cyclone of negative thinking, which people with mental health issues and addiction are, right? They're so stuck in their thinking, their stinking thinking, that they don't know where to stop. But if they put a gratitude journal, the gratitude guide journal right here, right? Now you look at it. And even if you do not use it the first day, the second day, the third day, having it someplace where you see it, that's imprinting on your subconscious. So that maybe the fifth day, you're like, let me I'm gonna fill out a line. And that is all that it takes. And that's why I really love the fact that you created this journal, and it gives people the ability to write what their highlight, and it's specific questions, which is really important because again, when you're steeped in struggling, real deep suffering, it's really hard to pull yourself out. But if it's what is one thing that you can look back and brought you joy today? Well, again, even if it's a cup of coffee, right, we can all find one thing, and that one thing, then that writing starts to create that visceral like joy in you that will cultivate more joy, right?
Right, exactly. And I think it's really something, as I said, if you write about it, it empowers you. There's something about that. So then tomorrow when I write, my highlight of my day was my podcast with Carrie Lewis, and it plants it. And there's something, and it's 5 minutes. I mean, I've
Yeah.
timed it a million times. It's 5 minutes, and you don't have to fill out every single line, but I always do. My thing is I'm like draw within the lines. It's always filled out completely. But it's just part of a thing. I've developed what I call the power hour, and it's getting the mind screwed on straight before the body goes into action. And it's get out of bed, make your bed, nice, get something accomplished, drink a quart of water, take my shower, shave, get ready, turn on the coffee machine, come in here, stretch for 10 minutes, gratitude journal for 5 or 6 minutes, meditate for 10 minutes, and then turn on the computer. And
Yeah.
then at the phone or whatever. But that gratitude journal, there's a little thing that I do in here, and you're not really going to be able to see it, but there's a little thing that says in the upper right-hand corner, it says daily number. And then there's
Yeah.
also another daily number on the lower right-hand side. And that is after you've written in the journal. So it's probably too much information, but 9 times out of 10, when I start my gratitude journal in the morning, I'm a 9. I've got so many blessings and abundance in my life. I
Yeah.
just am at a 9. I write through the gratitude journal, then the number after that's always 9.5. And the
Do you
only
ever
time
get to 10? Because you
I
said
get
9.5 last time too. I'm like, what's
I,
gonna take a 10,
and,
David?
and 10 is anything to do with either of my two sons. There's something that's really excited about that. But the one that's the solid 10 every time, which I get emotional about, is every time I walk off a stage, and about half the time I get a standing ovation. And I look out there and I just think, how did I get this lucky? Does anybody know? How many people know? Let me rephrase that. How many people know what it feels like to walk off a stage to a standing ovation for what you've said? And
Yeah.
it's just, it gets me emotional because I think, wow, that I obviously resonated. Then I'm a 10. And then I go to the book table. People want to hug you. They want to take your picture with the book. They want to buy more journals for their kids. Oh, and you get all that feedback. I love the stories. And one quick tip I always tell speakers, no matter how much content you have, no matter how many great modules you teach, or I'm not a PowerPoint person, I never use those. And what do you ever need a thumb drive or whatever? But the things that resonate the most, the number one thing I get comments on is the stories I tell,
Yeah.
because the stories
Absolutely.
always make you relate more than anything else.
Well, so think about this. This is why, yeah, I mean, you exactly nailed why I do this interview series is because, well, two things. I am not meant for everybody. There's no possible way. Like, if you are a truly empowered, um, loving person and you love yourself, you are going to turn people off because we're not meant to connect with everybody. However, the power of our story can absolutely align you with the person who's meant to talk to you. And so that's why I'm like, David, you got to come on the show because somebody in my audience might be like, that crazy Carrie with her tattoos and her cussing and all that. No, but David, he's a little bit closer to my age. He's a little bit, you know what I mean? He might have similar stories that resonates. And that truly is, the power of our story. Our story is our superpower. So, last question, if somebody wants you to speak at their college or in their corporation, do you speak on gratitude or like is what is the topic that you most often speak about? I
Yeah,
imagine
thank you,
gratitude.
Carrie. Probably no surprise. It's gratitude. And I know people have different topics and things, but mine are all gratitude related. Neutralizing obstacles through gratitude is the current talk I have.
Oh,
I have
good.
one, yeah, and I have one that's a little more for the business world, which is gratitude creates peak performance. But gratitude is always the underpinning of all of them. And so the best way to reach me is you could get me at thatgratitudeguy.com, and then also David at thatgratitudeguy.com. And you can also get this journal on Amazon, That Gratitude Guy's Daily Gratitude Journal. I sell a lot of them on Amazon, which is very handy because they take care of it and book it and ship them and package them and ship them all at one time. It's very easy. But that's the best way to get a hold of me. And I just think anybody, I'm always looking for speaking opportunities. I, like you, do a lot of coaching. You probably do more than I do, but I get a lot of my coaching clients from my talks,
Yeah.
both virtually and in person. They say, I really want to know more about this. Can you help me? And I've got some issues and so forth. And so I try to do ideally 2 to 3 talks a month, about one a
Yep.
week. And I've got some big virtual ones coming up. I have one I'm really excited about on March 20th. is National Happiness Day, and I'm the keynote speaker, and there's going to be about 10,000 people on the call. So
Just
that's
10,000 people. I
that's
mean,
gonna be kind of
that's an
tough.
easy day.
Easy peasy. So, but it's funny. And then, and one tip, you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to volunteer it. People always say to me, well, so what's one thing that if you took away nothing else that I said from this that would really
I
be
was just
helpful?
going to ask you this
And
question. So
so,
thank you for
yes,
being
you're welcome.
receptive.
I think it's so ideally, I'd love everybody to buy the gratitude journal and write in it for 5 minutes every day and see the unbelievable power it has. But I tell people, do me a favor, just write one word for a week. If you can write one thing you're grateful for, to me, I don't want to lead the witness, but typically health is right up there. My two sons are right up there. My family, my friends, my beautiful, I got a hot shower, food in the refrigerator. If you can just write one word and then try that for a week and see how you feel, and then try a sentence and then just
Yeah.
write a sentence and then maybe try two sentences. Before you know it, you'll be spending 5 minutes on something like this, and it's just transformative. And I just think and the thing that I tell people all the time is it's such a healthy coping mechanism in a world of so many destructive and deadly ones, which we don't have to list right here. But there's a lot of times that people are just trying to cope, and sometimes it kills them. It killed my wife, and having painkillers and things like that. So
Yeah.
it can help you in so many ways in such a healthy way.
Yeah, I love that. That's an amazing tip. And to the audience, I share my story often, but gratitude is without a doubt one of the very first things I started consistently doing. Interestingly enough, right? Riding the train into Boston to work on Newberry Street at Nordstrom Rack, I would write my gratitude. And you know, the proof is in the pudding, because look where I am today, so many years later. So David, thank you so much, guys.
So
Please
welcome.
reach out to David if you felt at all called by anything he said, which I know you did, because hello, I was just saying. And again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you immensely.
Thank you, Carrie. Likewise. Thank you so much.